I was young. I was only 25 years old and hadn't found my place in life just yet. This happened just before I became the successful real estate agent that I am today. I didn't have an expensive car or the luxury to travel anywhere I wanted in the world. No, I was just at the beginning of my journey. I was becoming a man, but at that time, I was still very much a kid. But there's one experience that I will never forget, and even if I knew it or not, it helped me build character. So, as I was saying, I was just 25 years old, a fresh college graduate with no real purpose in life. I wanted to get a job, but you know how it is. No one hires you without any experience, but you get experience by being hired. It's a vicious circle, I know. After about a month of job hunting, I renounced the idea of working for a big company, having an office job, and I started looking elsewhere. I saw an ad for a position at a convenience store. The position was for a store clerk, and I had to work the night shift. I didn't mind it that much. I was used to staying up late, so the night shift didn't sound like that bad of an idea. The interview with the store owner was, how can I put it, weird. He wasn't your typical employer, which asks you questions like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Or why did you apply for this job? No, he was kind of quiet, and actually, I talked the majority of the time. I started telling him about myself and my degree. I told him that I'm a team player and all those things you're required to say at job interviews. But as I was talking, I kept looking into his eyes, and he didn't seem to be all there. His eyes were wandering, and I didn't know if he was actually listening to me or not. He felt kind of absent from the entire conversation. Anyway, as soon as I stopped talking, he told me that I can start on Monday. I thanked him and stuck my hand forward so I can shake his, but he didn't seem to notice that. So I wished him a great day and told him I'll see him on Monday before leaving his office. On Monday, I ran into another guy, which was 3 or 4 years older than me. He was quitting his job and I was going to replace him, so he was there to show me where everything is and stuff like that. The guy's name was John, and he was really nice and helpful, answering all the questions I had. After the so-called training, before leaving out the door, he turned around and said that he needed to tell me something else. He said that the owner was weird. John said that he would catch him talking to himself quietly sometimes, and other times he would just stare at him or other customers. So he suggested that I would keep an eye open. The news didn't exactly go well with me. I worked the night shift. It was pitch black outside, and the owner, who was there all the time, was weird. Anyway, I thanked John for the advice, and then he went on his way. Even on the first day, I could feel the owner's eyes watching me, watching my every move. But he didn't talk. He just stared. I thought that he was doing that because it was my first day and he wanted to make sure that everything is in place and that I was doing my job perfectly. But this behavior continued for some time. Sometimes he would come over to the counter and say something, but I couldn't understand. It was like he was mumbling and whispering at the same time, looking through me rather than at me. It was very unsettling. Most nights, even though I found out from John that he had a wife, he would stay late at the store. He wouldn't do anything there. He wasn't staying because he had something to do or anything. No, he just stayed and stared. Oh, and sometimes he would watch TV, but with the volume very low. But one day, he didn't come in at all. I was so used to him being there. Even though it was creepy, it felt weird when he didn't show up. But in my mind, I thought that he had stayed so many late nights that he wanted some time to sleep and relax. The owner continued to miss work. He didn't even come in on the next day or the day after that. He went missing for about 4 days. But in a sense, it was better because I didn't have his eyes on me the whole time and I could do my job without the pressure of someone watching me. On the 5th day, though, something happened. As I came to work, I noticed that his car was in the parking lot. He finally came, I said to myself. Maybe he took a little vacation. It wasn't like I knew that because he never talked to me. I entered the store and there he was on his chair. But something was off. He looked different. He was a weird man before, but now he looked drained, like he didn't get any sleep for the past few days. His complexion was bad and he had huge bags under his eyes. I said hi to him, but he didn't reply. He just continued to stare at nothing. There was something unsettling in the air. The vibe was weird. The only time he got up was to go to the bathroom. As he did, I could see that one of his shoes had a stain on it. He had brown leather shoes on his feet and a stain that was dark red or something similar, and it covered the outside of his right shoe. I didn't ask him about it because frankly, he would never answer me. As he was walking, I could see something else. On one of his fingers, he had a Band-Aid and blood was seeping through it. But before he went to the bathroom, I noticed that he reached into his bag and pulled out something that was covered in paper. It was something pretty long and it somewhat looked like a knife. Maybe it was just my imagination. This is what I thought at the moment. Anyway, I didn't give it too much thought about his appearance or the object. After my shift, I went home exhausted. I didn't know why, but all I knew was that I needed some sleep. I got myself into bed and turned on the TV. As I was switching channels, there was a breaking news report on one of them, so I stopped to see what's going on. The reporter said that a woman had been brutally murdered right there in her home. She had been cut open with a large carving knife and that she even resisted the killer, but eventually he overpowered her. He also said that the husband was in shock and wouldn't talk to the police. They were still looking for the killer. Then, as I was laying in bed, I remembered the object that he took out of his bag, and also the stain on his shoe and the cut on his finger. The dots connected and I just knew that the owner was the killer. I never really had a lot of friends growing up. All of my friends, my closest ones more specifically, turned out to be my family. I have two cousins, Andrew and Alex. They're both twins, and they are the exact same age as me, so it's only natural that given the circumstances, we would hang out all day during our childhood. We were all kind of troublemakers. Don't get me wrong, we were good kids, but we also loved a little bit of chaos in our life. You know the saying, boys will be boys. We went on all sorts of different adventures and pulled all kinds of pranks all over town. One time we egged Mrs. Johnson's house during Halloween. It was hilarious. Well, for us at least. I don't think she loved it too much. Other times we would ring doorbells at night and then hide in the bushes. I know it sounds corny, but then we just love that kind of stuff. I remember one year we went over to Mr. Paddock's house. He was the neighborhood grump, and Andrew hid a little remote control car in his mailbox. When the Grouch came out that morning so he could get his mail, we three from across the street accelerated the car exactly when he opened the little door and it hit him right in the face. It was hilarious. Of course, he destroyed the car right there on the spot while looking around for us, but you know what, it was well worth it. The bottom line was that we would always have fun and we didn't care about the consequences. Another thing we had in common, besides the fact that we loved to play pranks, was Halloween. It was our favorite holiday because it was that only time of year when we would get to scare the most people. But as time went on, we kind of grew out of the pranking phase. We were teenagers at around 16 years old, and all the stuff we used to do seemed to us just to be a little too childish. So I'm going to tell you a story about a Halloween we would never forget for the rest of our lives. I know I definitely won't. It left a mark on me, and I still have night terrors, even though I'm in my 30s right now. That year, we decided to do something different. "Hey man," Andrew told me, "I have a friend who could buy us some beer and a pack of cigarettes. I was talking to Alex and he thought we should go to the cemetery," he continued. "Yeah, dude, I'm up for it." "Are you sure our parents aren't going to see us?" I replied, thinking about what my mom would do to me if she caught me not only drinking, but smoking. "Come on, don't worry. Who's going to be there in the middle of the night? All the parents with kids would be out trick-or-treating, and our parents would be at home drinking wine and talking about politics or whatever it is they're interested in," Andrew told me, making me feel even more comfortable with the idea. It was sad. We were supposed to go to the cemetery that night and have a little bit of a party. He talked with that friend of his who had a fake ID, and sure enough, he got us a case of beer and a pack of cigarettes. Andrew hid them in the bushes behind his house, and when nightfall came, he sneaked the goods out of his yard. The streets were packed, and there we were, the three of us, trying to hide this case of beer under our coat that Alex brought with him. Everyone was out trick-or-treating. We were forced to swerve so we wouldn't bump into a little Hulk or a butterfly who was so full of energy from all the candy she'd eaten that it seemed like she was on batteries. Our main concern was to not drop the case of beer on the ground, and thankfully we made it to the cemetery all right. "This place looks kind of creepy, doesn't it?" I told the twins. "Yeah, but good thing no one is out here to bother us. Come on, take a cigarette," Alex told me while reaching the pack over to me. We found a spot right in the back so that absolutely no one would come there. We were sitting on an old tombstone which wasn't marked. The night went on, and beer after beer, we got a little bit tipsy. The three of us had a great time. We told jokes and we laughed so hard that our stomachs started to hurt. Alex told us a joke and we burst out laughing, but we could hear something. Instead of 3 laughs, there were actually 4. We immediately stopped and looked around. "Did you hear that?" I asked them, and they nodded while they were focused to see if there was anyone in the cemetery besides us. "I guess it's the buzz from the beer," Andrew said, and we all started laughing. Again, the laugh could be heard, but it was like it was coming from right behind me. I immediately got up from the tombstone and looked behind me. There was nothing but an old oak tree. "Who's there? You don't want to get your butt beat on Halloween, do you?" I said in a threatening manner, but again, someone laughed. "Let's get out of here," Alex said, and we all agreed. We started sprinting towards the exit. "Ouch!" Alex yelled. Andrew and I stopped and we looked behind. There was no sight of his brother. "Where are you, man?" I asked. "In here, I fell," he responded. We saw that next to the pavement there was a freshly dug up grave without any marking or anything. It was pretty deep, so he needed a little bit of help to get out. "Hold on, we got you," Andrew said. Somehow Alex reached out to our hands and finally managed to get out. As he did, there was a laugh. We turned around and we saw a guy next to the tombstone in the shadows holding a shovel and saying, "Need to dig 2 more." Then he started chasing us. We ran as if our lives depended on it. We arrived home and we went straight to my room. "That was crazy," I told them, and they both nodded. As I looked behind them, out the window, I saw a figure. "Hey, what's that?" I asked, and they both turned around. As soon as they did, out of nowhere, a lightning bolt lit up the sky, and the person was at the window. It was the man, with a hat over his eyes, yellow teeth, and a dirty old shovel in his hand. He tapped on the window. "I'll make sure all 3 of you fit in that grave," he spoke. We yelled and we went into the living room where our parents were. I told my dad and he went outside to check just to see that there was no one out there. Right then and there, we decided that Halloween wasn't for us anymore. I snuggled deeper in my coat. It was a really cold night. I glanced at the time. It was 11:20 p.m. I was the only one awake inside the motel, minus the security guards. I always worked the night shift here. I needed more than one job to pay my bills and let me live a comfortable life. I picked up the novel I was reading and proceeded to lose myself within its pages. A jingle of the bell attached to the front door made me look up. A man was walking in holding a briefcase. He looked really tired. I plastered on the bright smile and said, "Welcome, how may I help you?" The man looked at me and said in a loud voice, "A room." "Sure, which type of room?" He walked from the entrance where he'd been standing to the front desk. "Anyone that's peaceful," he whispered, looking at me through the reception glass with unblinking eyes. His face was hard, as if he'd been taught how to smile. His eyes bored into mine, making goosebumps pop out of my skin. I was suddenly grateful for the glass protecting me. It was about 3 feet high with a small opening that allowed me to receive or give through it. I handed the keys over and I told him it's the last room on the first floor to your left. He signed his name as Dave, wordlessly collected the keys from me and went upstairs. What a weird man. The next day, Dave, the creepy man, came in around the same time as the night before, still carrying his briefcase. I wondered what job he did that kept him out so late. I started calling him Dave, that creepy man, because I found it amusing. I greeted him when he came in, but he just looked at me with a furious expression and went to his room. I scoffed in annoyance. Good manners were hard to come by these days. I was 22, and life was starting to lose its excitement. I was determined to have fun wherever I could find it. That's why I read novels. They helped me escape to a world where almost anything is possible. My job at the motel wasn't stressful. We didn't have more than a handful of people who spent the night at once. I strongly believed something was wrong with Dave, the creepy man. He always looked at me like I did something that deserved his anger. I had to greet him every time he came in, only to be rewarded with his customary scowl. It had been 3 days now, and it was getting on my nerves. The telephone on my desk started to ring and I picked it up, responding cheerfully. There was no response for a while, but I could hear someone breathing down the line. I was about to hang up when the other person spoke. "I need dinner. Send it to my room." It was Dave, the creepy man. My mood turned sour immediately. I glanced at the time. It was midnight. I informed him that we didn't render such service at our motel. I told him he could order something and I'd send it up to his room. He hung up without a word. How could he expect dinner at this hour? This was the first time he spoke a full sentence to me. Dave was making me not look forward to my job. Just yesterday, he called that he needed someone to do his laundry. Again, I told him we don't render those kind of services. I even suggested giving him the number of some laundry companies, and he hung up without responding. Now the telephone was ringing, and I knew it was Dave without picking it up. I picked it up anyway, saying hello with a cheerfulness that I didn't feel. Something's wrong with the tap. Come up and check it. I looked to the ceiling for patience. I told him I couldn't check anything because I was not a repairman, but that the management will send someone up in the morning to fix whatever's been broken. But I need water now. His voice sounded menacing. I swallowed and I told him there was nothing I could do about it and that he should just be patient. I hung up before he did, feeling a pang of victory. I giggled before returning to my novel. I only had a few pages left and I was curious to know if the heroine would finally have enough confidence to plan a coup for the throne her brother stole from her. I heard footsteps echoing on the stairs and glanced at the time. It was 1 a.m. I wondered what the person wanted. There were only 7 people spending the night here. I saw Dave coming towards me with a baseball bat. Before I could move, he swung the bat at the glass surrounding me and it shattered. I yelled and covered my face from the onslaught of the glass pieces. "I'm going to kill you," Dave says, and the intention is well conveyed. I had never been more scared in my life. The security guards sometimes patrolled the surrounding area, so they might not have heard the commotion Dave caused. He reached in and tried to grab me. I smacked his hand away and ran around the reception desk. If I could make it outside, I would be able to get away from Dave. He ran after me and swung his bat. It connected with the back of my head with a thunk. I went down, holding my head. It throbbed. I struggled not to lose consciousness as Dave grabbed my hair and started dragging me on the floor. I kicked and struggled to no avail. He had an iron grip on me. "You must have liked to anger me, isn't that right? You think you can control the world with your blonde hair and beautiful eyes?" I listened to his ramblings in shock, wondering what my blonde hair had to do with anything. I screamed for all I was worth, "Help, anyone!" I received another jab to my head. "Shut up," he growled. I pulled on the hand, dragging my hair, and bit hard into the wrist. He let me go, groaning. I crawled as fast as I could. The entrance was my finish line. I scrambled to my feet, half running, half limping. Finally, I made it outside. A hand dragged me by my waist and I screamed. My voice was hoarse. I heard a crack and the pressure around my waist released. I looked back to see Steve, one of the security on patrol, holding up a gun. He had used the butt of his gun to hit Dave's head. He was on the floor, knocked out. "Are you okay?" Steve asked, with concern in his eyes. I couldn't respond. I was paralyzed by fear. He handcuffed Dave and called the police. I narrated the ordeal to the officers, shivering under the blanket that they gave me. I quit my job at the motel the following day. No job was worth the risk of my life.
"There's a job this weekend. Are you interested?" Becky asked me. She walked to where I sat on the sofa and plopped down. We both shared an apartment and had been living together for about 7 months. Becky and I were out of college and were currently unemployed. After looking for jobs for a while, we had given up and gotten a small place together. We got money from doing odd jobs, reselling things for people or loading warehouses. Most times, the jobs could be stressful, but Becky and I let go of our dignity in exchange for the money we would get. Dignity could never feed us anyway. "Where is the place?" I asked. Becky told me that it was a bit far, almost at the outskirts of town, but because of that, they were willing to pay us $200 each. My eyes bulged at the sound of the money, and I immediately told her we had to go. The next day, a cab dropped us off at the warehouse location, and Becky called the owner. He directed us to enter through the back. I thought it was a bit strange, almost as if he had something to hide. We got into the warehouse and found about 3 other guys there. One of the guys was the owner, the rest were like us. We were asked to sit down and wait for the goods we had to upload. I sat close to Becky and we spoke in low tones, planning how we would spend the money. We heard a truck pull up and we all sat up. The back door opened and a huge guy walked in. He told us that our only job was to carry the boxes and arrange them inside. We were not supposed to look inside or ask questions. The boxes weren't really heavy, but there had to be close to 400 boxes in the truck. We kept on working, passing the boxes between us to the last person who arranged them on the floor. We were down to the last set, and by that time, we were all exhausted. Sweat droplets ran down our faces, but we didn't complain. I looked at Becky where she was standing close to the truck. She looked really tired. "We're almost done." I tried to encourage her, even though I was tired too. She nodded and passed me the box. It slipped from her fingers just before I could collect it. The men around us froze as the contents of the box spilled out. White powder spilled all over the floor and I stared at Becky aghast. They had us moving. They were making us commit a crime. "What's that? Looks like cocaine," someone behind me said. I swallowed hard as one of the guys supervising us came close. "What's going on over there?" he asked. He was big and walked over with a swagger. I scanned him quickly and saw that he wasn't armed. Becky's frightened eyes met with mine and I swallowed hard. Perhaps they wouldn't notice anything was amiss. "No, nothing," I stammered. He got close enough to see what had happened, and at that point, I knew it was over for us. There was no way they would let us go. "Run!" I yelled at Becky. We tore around the truck and ran as if our lives depended on it, which it did. The rest of the guys loading the warehouse ran away too after seeing that they had been helping them load cartons of illegal. No one wanted to get into trouble for a few $100s. The money was too small compared to the risk. I heard the last girl scream, but I didn't bother to look back. And of course, she wasn't my business. One of the guys was chasing us really hard. I glanced back at Becky. She was huffing and doing her best to keep up. "Zoe, I don't," she gasped, "know how much I can keep up." "Keep running," I yelled back. Becky was a bit plump and I could see the exertion running had caused on her. Her face was pink and sweaty. Her chest was heaving as she struggled to breathe. I couldn't leave Becky behind, so I urged her on and told her to run faster. I didn't want to think about what would happen to us if we got caught. Lucky for us, only one guy was chasing us while the other one tried to capture the rest. I saw the road just ahead of us and heaved a sigh of relief. I turned back to tell Becky the news when I saw that the guy was almost upon her. "Look out!" My warning came a moment too late. Becky was pushed to the ground by the man and she yelled as he dragged her by the leg. I turned back immediately and ran for them. Becky was screaming as she tried to free her leg from his hand. He kept dragging her back through the dust. I ran straight for the man and he quickly dropped Becky's leg when he saw that I wasn't stopping. I shouted at Becky to run and she did, limping to the main road. The man sneered at me and slapped me hard across my face. My ears rang and my vision swam. I brought my knee up and kicked the man between his legs. I heard a satisfying grunt. I crawled away and half hopped, half jogged till I was free from his groping hands. I cradled the side of my face that he had slapped. It was tender and felt sore. I couldn't worry about that now. I ran as fast as I could, even though I was getting really tired. I saw Becky reach the main road and was relieved that at least she was safe. I looked back and saw that the man had given up on chasing me. I was almost at the main road where speeding cars could see us. I got to Becky's side and doubled over, breathing hard. Together, we walked and limped till we were able to get a cab that took us back home. We didn't tell anyone about what happened and could only hope that those people would not be able to trace us. Becky said the guy that linked her up with the warehouse job had disappeared. She didn't know him very well and had only met him a few times at the bus stop. Becky and I started to apply for jobs rather than looking for menial jobs. Soon enough, we got jobs at different places. The pay wasn't fantastic, but it was way better than not knowing when the next money would come. I work as a security guard at the mall. They have me doing the night shifts, but that's okay with me. I'm not a morning person at all, and I gladly accepted the job. Ever since I was a kid, I would always stay up late, playing video games, reading, or drawing. I consider myself a bit of an introvert, so I didn't have many friends growing up. I attended high school, and that's about where my education stopped. I didn't want to go to college, so my parents forced me to get a job. One thing led to another, and here I was, walking around in an empty mall all night long. But I liked it. One night, as I was walking around the food court, I heard a noise coming from the direction of the emergency exit. "Who's there?" I asked. No response, so I kept walking. But after a few steps, the sound of metal scratching on the door caught my attention. That's when I put my hand on my trusty pepper spray and headed towards the door. I stood there for about 20 seconds, listening, and then I quickly opened it. To my surprise, it was a homeless guy. He was outside the door and he was banging a metal cup on the door. I told him to go away, but before he did, he threw a banana peel at my face. Yeah, the glamorous job of a mall guard. The next night, another thing happened. I was in my office looking at the security cameras when I heard an explosion. I almost fell out of my chair. On one camera, I saw that a car was burning in the parking lot. I went outside and immediately called the fire department. Then, a few nights passed peacefully. One night, as usual, I was in my office sipping on a cup of coffee to try and stay awake for the next 5 hours. I hadn't slept well that day. I made my booster, that's what I call my coffee, really strong, and sip after sip, my stomach was grumbling. About halfway through the cup, I had a strong urge to go to the loo. It was a call to nature that could not be ignored. I quickly got up and started walking faster and faster until I found myself in one of the stalls. As I was sitting there, something echoed throughout the large corridors. It was the sound of something falling. "Oh, come on, not now," I said while trying to take a dump. It couldn't come at a worse moment. With great trouble, I got up from the toilet seat and went to investigate. The noise came from an electronics store. I slowly entered it, trying to be as quiet as possible. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I asked, but as soon as I finished my question, a giant rat fell on me. As I was lying on the floor, trying to get that monstrosity off of me, I heard laughter and footsteps. "Who's there? Stop! I have pepper spray," I said. But I don't think the person was intimidated. I could still hear the footsteps and I started to follow them. They sounded really close to me, but as soon as I reached a corner, I couldn't see anyone. Whoever it was, he was fast and knew how to hide. "Come out here! You're trespassing and I'll call the police!" I said, in hope of scaring the culprit, but it obviously didn't work. "You can't catch me!" The voice came from the opposite side of where I was, just around the corner. I started running, and as soon as I went past the last store on the corner, I found myself slipping, falling on the floor and hitting the back of my head on the tiles. I got kinda dizzy and just stayed there for a couple of minutes. I got up and saw that nacho cheese was spread on the tiles. "You think you're funny?" I yelled, getting more and more angry. I couldn't believe that this was happening to me. I got up, saw that I was covered in nacho cheese, but I didn't care. I wanted to catch the person who made me look like a fool. I started following the voice once more. I heard the laugh in another section of the mall. I tried to be as stealthy as I could, so as to not startle the culprit. As I moved towards him, my stomach started grumbling again. I rushed to the nearest washroom only to find it locked. "The janitor must have locked it," I murmured. As I moved towards the second-floor washroom, I could still hear the laughter of the trespasser. I was determined to beat the hell out of that shit, but first, something else needed to be taken care of. To my surprise, the second-floor washroom was locked as well. The laughter of the person grew louder. "You will pay for the game that you're playing!" I shouted. I was in a very tight spot. Suddenly, someone pushed me to the floor and ran away. The fall caused me to lose control and I pooped my pants. I cannot even express how embarrassed I felt. Laying there, I tried to look for the person who had pushed me, but could not see anyone. My shift was about to end. Soon it would be opening time and people would walk in. I did not want anyone to see me like that. All of this happened a little over 2 months ago, but the person hasn't returned since then. I thoroughly checked the security footage but could only see a dark figure in a hoodie. When will he be back? What will happen next time? Was he dangerous? Since that day, he made me fear the night which I once loved and the solitude that managed to feed my soul.